Hi, there you are. Not yet audio.
I'm getting there. Are you hear me? Yeah,
I can hear
good, good. Okay, let me put in gallery view. Yes. Hi, Raymond.
Hi.
Man, long time.
It's a long time. Actually, I think
Very
we
long.
met only once at a facial retreat
Yeah, I mean,
in Italy.
once or twice. I don't remember exactly.
Yeah, I did work on your logo for Integral Being.
I know that I remember, but that time where there was actually not much use of Skype or things like this. I think we just
No.
emailed a lot.
Yes, we did. Yeah. I looked through them to see how it all went, but yeah. Um, how are
And you are
things?
in Amsterdam?
Sorry?
You are in Amsterdam?
Yes, I am. I'm also on the other side of the globe, but also the other side of the day. It's night here. It's day
Yes.
over there, I guess.
But yes, yes. Today now is 9 o'clock in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I usually get up early, so I'm up since about 5:15.
Oh, that's really seriously early.
Well, for me, actually, it's not so seriously early. Usually, my wake up time is around 4:30.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's not the
yeah.
night. That's not the morning. That's the night, actually.
For you, it's the night.
Yes.
No, I know you are a night person, right?
Yes, I am. Yes.
Yes. No, I'm a very early morning person. I since well, because basically for years and years and years I was training around between I was starting training usually around 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock in the morning in Pune. So that's changed completely my approach to the day.
Okay. Um, shall we start? Because I have a lot of questions,
Sure,
and
let's
and
start.
um, actually, I have read a little bit about your history, but I want to go a little bit deeper into it.
Okay.
And I imagine uh, your training in Aikido was before you met Osho, or after?
Well, my martial art training started actually before Aikido. I started with karate
Mm-hmm.
when I was about 17, something, 17, 18. Then I moved to Taekwondo and Viet Do, and
Mm-hmm.
then which basically all the martial arts that had to do really with combat and fighting and all that kind of stuff. And then I started Aikido later on. So I was about 29, 30 years old when I started. Yeah, Aikido and sword. Yeah.
Sorry, the sound fell away for a little bit. You said Aikido, and then the last sentence was dropped.
And then I did the Iaido also. I don't know if you know what Iaido is, but Iaido is a sword technique where you use basically the sword to in a specific pattern,
Mm-hmm.
which has to do with not so much with the fighting, but with the following a certain kind of movement, which has a lot to do with precision and speed and beauty. And so it's not a combat technique, it's more a meditation.
Was this already working with the Hara?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, all martial arts are Hara oriented. It's like there is no way that you can do actually martial arts without working with your Hara. If you really want to have a real experience, what does it mean to practice a martial art?
Mm-hmm.
So
And
that's what it is.
okay, but so that's true. I believe you, but I still want to know how for you the sense of Hara developed, because I guess when you started with karate, it was just a theory, and at some point it became a felt thing,
Yeah,
right? So
yes,
how did that
definitely.
work for you?
Okay, so before actually getting into my relationship with the hard work and with the understanding of this, what really was in my awareness were things like grounding and centering.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really have the knowledge about Hara or the concept about Hara, but I had a feel that I needed to have some sort of connection with my center,
Mm-hmm.
and that I needed definitely more grounding. When I was very young, I was a very spacey, kid. I could really go everywhere with my imagination and vision, but I was I had very little ground. And somehow I realized that. I noticed that something definitely was missing in the way I was functioning in my day-to-day life. So I started kind of looking for centering practices, and that introduced me to karate, because a friend of my father was actually a teacher of karate. So I started practicing karate because also I was part of the student movement in Italy, so there were a little bit of the need of protection. So in Italy in the 60s, there was a lot of political strife everywhere, so there was this strange mix of uh, a practical approach based on the need of feeling grounded and centering and centered, and another practical approach which was a kind of self-defense, because the politics was very intense at the time. And then there was also something spiritual which I could feel, but I could not name. I didn't know exactly what I was looking for. I was like, there is something that I really need to focus on. So it was a conjunction of different things that were actually very chaotic in the beginning. And then little by little, also starting practicing with more attention, and also with the kind of work that I was doing. Originally, when I was 28, I started working as an anthropologist. So I came in touch with, um, especially in Mexico, I came in touch with all traditions about magic and about centering. And in one of these situations, I got in touch with a healer, and
Mm-hmm.
the healer did a lot of work on my belly, and and it was actually quite painful. And he didn't have any theory at all, and he only was talking about good wind and bad wind. That was it. And then for I think it was about 40 days, I had to wrap myself in a wool cloth, very very tight, and hold it there. So my attention was continuously coming back to my belly, to my belly, to my belly, to my belly. And little by little, I realized that actually when I was in touch with my belly, I was feeling better.
Mm-hmm.
I was feeling more in tune with myself. I was feeling more attentive to what was happening also around me. I was walking in a different way. I was sleeping in a different way. So that started kind of opening the door into, okay, what's going on here?
And what tradition was this healer? Do you remember?
I have no idea. Look, I don't. I didn't. it was not really a tradition. He was just somebody that was in the. I met, through a friend. He was a farmer, and
So it was this, maybe some Italian folk healing, or
no, he was in Mexico.
oh,
I was I,
sorry.
I was living in Mexico. I lived in Mexico for 3 years. And I mean, I assume that. So let me think. I met him when I was living in Oaxaca, which is a city on the close to the Pacific side. So I assumed that he was part of the Zapotecas, which was the main tribe in that area. But I can't be completely sure, because
Okay.
I never asked him. I just found the guy completely fascinating. even though it was painful. And that was actually also very interesting. How come it's so painful that somebody goes into my belly, you know? So I started really also inquiring and say, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense. Why there is so much pain there? So, and then this was 1980. So a few years before,
Mm-hmm.
I had started reading Osho in
Okay.
1976, and in reading him, I had started encountering some places where he was quoting or talking about the Hara Center. So things started kind of falling in place by themselves, you know. And so I said, okay, let me find out what the Hara is something that also my Taekwondo teacher was mentioning, and my, you know, but was still very up in the air, not so, yeah.
Yeah. You know, talk on. You're telling your history. So you
Yes,
read about it with Osho, and you had some experiences with martial arts, but it was still external martial arts, right? And Aikido
yes,
is more internal. So
yes.
how did that start?
Yeah. Then in 1982, I moved away from Mexico. I circulated in Asia.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was in Asia, I lived in Thailand for about, I would say, 7, 8 months.
Mm-hmm.
And I did a school of Thai massage.
Okay.
And that school was actually in a monastery inside the main temple in Bangkok. So every day I was going there, and I would meet with the monks, and I would meet my teacher. We were only 4 students, and he didn't speak any English at all, and of course no Italian. So everything was about practice. And I would say that about more than 60% of the work that he was teaching me and the others was working with the Hara.
Okay.
You know, working with the Hara, meditating in the Hara, breathing in the Hara, you know, centering into the Hara. So he started kind of showing me what I could do. And because he didn't speak, it was all about practice, which I loved it, because there was no theory or ideas. And and I did it for 4 months every day, few hours a day. So little by little, I simply started feeling a sort of intimacy with my belly, you know, and naturally I felt that actually there was something very familiar about being in the belly, and trusting that a lot of information that I would get moment to moment from the outer world would actually be in my belly rather than in my head. So I started kind of giving more and more attention to what was happening in my belly. And I realized, well, I really want to get there. I really want to uh, become even more familiar. I want to understand. I want to practice. I want to really get everything that is possible for me in that place. So after a few months, I went back to Italy, and I landed in a very small village in the south of Italy, on the Amalfi Coast, where I had some friends, and I rented a house there because I wanted to live. I wanted to live in that village. It was a fisherman village, and exactly 50 meters from where I was living, there was a dojo, an Aikido
Okay.
dojo, which was like a miracle, you know. And there was one actually of the oldest Italian Aikido teachers, who was a fisherman and a woodworker and a carpenter, a
You
very
remember his name?
Pasqualino.
Okay.
Yes, Pasqualino Aiello. He just died 4 months ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, 4 months ago. He was 80. 81 or 82. So when I met him, I was 32 and he was 42. And I chose also that village because there are no roads. It's on a mountain. So every time I had to do thousands of stairs to go just shopping or to go to the beach. So everything was about legs and feet and pelvic floor and grounding, and then on top of it there was the Aikido. So for me it was like was incredible because it was exactly what I needed. I needed to ground, I needed to center, and this man was the most innocent, gentle man I have met in my life. And at the same time, when he was on the tatami, on the dojo, he was a lion. He was like an incredible presence. So, I just was exactly where I needed to be.
Okay.
And that was so that's where my practice started, and I then I did practice. I was practicing Aikido 4, 5, 6 times a week with him, but then my luck, I don't know, in this is, how it is when you are really, when the intention is very clear, the world responds so beautifully. So after 1 year, appears in that village a Japanese man called Hideo Kobayashi, who was a seventh dan, so a very high-ranking sword teacher. And he was also a quite famous healer of something which is called Seitai.
Yes, I looked that up. I looked that up extensively yesterday. It was really
Right.
interesting.
So, and Hideo he was also an artist, a painter, a sculptor, and so both me and my Aikido teacher became his students because so which was fantastic, So he was living in Rome, and he would come once a month to do a weekend with us, teaching Iaido, the sword, and also teaching Seitai. And twice a year, he would come for a week. So we would have these very long, week-long retreats. And and that was another, incredible support and an opening and understanding. We would do meditation, we would do energy transmissions, we would work with healing, So, and everything was about being in the Hara.
And
There was,
was he a student of the founder, Noguchi, or?
he was a student of the founder.
Okay.
He was a direct student of Noguchi. Yeah.
And have you met him? I don't know until when he lived, but I mean Noguchi himself.
Hideo?
If you met his name Harachiki Noguchi?
No, Noguchi was in Japan, and he was already very old, I think, when Hideo came to Italy. So no, I never, I no, I had no possibility. I didn't even think about it, but really, I had plenty, I had plenty on my plate,
Yes, it's better to stay focused. So
yes.
And this was all still before you met Osho, right?
This was still all before I was reading Osho, but I was not his disciple, and I had not met him yet. And so this was 82. In 83, I went with my Aikido teacher. I went to a sword retreat in Rome with another teacher, which was Tada Sensei, who was actually the Japanese teacher of my teacher in Aikido. So we did this week-long retreat in Rome, and basically we would start every morning and finish every evening with a long meditation on Tanden, how they call it, and Jotanden. So the connection between the higher Tanden and the lower Tanden. And a lot of sword work, hours and hours every day. So, and it was interesting because after a few days, then I went back to Praiano, where I was living in Amalfi Coast together with Pasqualino. And I started feeling like a tree that had been completely pruned, like everything that was not essential had been cut off, by my own movements. Yeah. And then suddenly came this, I need to see Osho. I need to see Osho. I need a master. I need someone that really helps me to move beyond where I am in this moment. So I went to Pasqualino and I told him, and he looked at me and said, Vical, do you feel that he is a master? I said, oh yeah, absolutely. And then he looked to me with these very sweet eyes and said, what are you still doing here? It was so beautiful and helpful. So after a few days, I got a ticket and I went to the ranch in America because he had moved to America about a year and a half before. So that was the beginning of October 83. So he was there about a year and a half, probably maybe nearly 2 years. So I went there and yeah, and then that's completely another story.
Yes, I understand. Yeah, we'll get to that. I just have one question which came up like a few minutes ago. You said about because I work a lot with the three centers also, and
Yeah.
I'm for me, I discovered that the connection between the upper and the lower danchan is very important. It's like the upper danchan closes or opens the lower one. And I'm curious because you work with that. You just mentioned it. How was
Yes.
that? What was the connection in the way you were taught?
Well, for me, the main thing that I see, and I still it's happening for me and it works for me, is that the experience, the perception of the experience is in the belly. But then in that perception, in that absorbing of the suchness of any moment, there is a spark which has to do with creativity, and that sparks arrives here as a vision, no, as an opening, as an intuition, as a as a thunder. It can come in many different ways, but basically it's really like boom, something like that. Oh, and that's one experience. Another experience, which is much more subtle, at least in me, is that something arrives and starts here and is like a very tiny seed. And then at some point it drops into my belly and then it becomes action. And it's a kind of opposite process. It's much less explosive, is much more subtle, and it has a lot to do with the black essence. And I have really learned to trust it, to really go, okay, no, I don't understand something. I have just a tiny sense of intuition, and I don't do anything about it. I just let it be. And then usually, in the middle of the night, in my favorite time, which usually is around 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, I wake up and I go to sit and go boom, and something becomes very clear and is in my belly, and I know what I want to do. I know what I have to do. I know what I need to do. and that's how it is, you know. But I'm not a very theoretical person, you know, so I don't really give it so much attention in terms of I need to have a grasp of what happens. I really trust that it goes by itself. I actually get out of the way as much as possible.
Okay. Yes, this raised another question, but I think because I wanted to know how you were teaching those classes in the Osho Center. But I think it would be nice to know also how that started, because you were leading a school for centering,
Yes.
and yeah, I would like to know how that.
Okay. In 87, I went to, after being at the ranch two or three times for shorter periods, because I was living and working in Italy, and at that time I was working as a photographer, and giving massage and all this kind of stuff. In 87, beginning of 87, I went to India to be with Osho, because I really felt that I wanted to be close to him. And he had just moved back into the ashram. So when I arrived there, there were like, I think we were like 85 people, very few people. So every discourse in the evening was like being in a family, very intimate, you know. And I had two jobs. So I was partly working in the kitchen, because being an Italian, I'm supposed to be working in the kitchen, and also because I liked it. And also I was guarding at the front gate. And that's where I know the person that was in charge asked me if I knew anything about martial arts. I said, yes, I have been practicing for a while. So can you teach something? So I started teaching the other guards a little bit of working with the jaw, which is the stick, the 120 centimeter stick, which was more about discipline, because there was actually no real need or danger, but it was more about bringing, you know, a team and discipline and the connection between us. Then I went back to Italy for a few months, because I needed to work, and those Italians could not stay in India more than 6 months. And then, so I was in Italy for a few months. I made a photo book, and then after 6 months, I went back to Pune, and I brought this photo book to Osho's secretary, Neelam. And in that photo book, there was, together with the photo book, I brought a picture of a dewdrop on a leaf. So after 3 days, Neelam calls me back and says, Osho really liked your picture, because he often speaks about the dewdrops, you know, and he sent you this message. He wants you to take a picture of a drop exactly in the moment when it starts falling. And that was my first koan. I was like, I had no clue what that meant, you know, and how could do it, you know. I tried a few times, but of course the finger is always much slower than the falling of the drop. But at the same time, I became a guard of in Osho's house. So Osho House had 16 people in shifts of 4 people, 4 shifts of 4 people that would turn around during day and night to guard the house, Osho's house. Because there have been a few years, you know, there have been
The
some
whole adventure and coming back, and yes.
Yes, but and also because there were few Hindu fanatics that were kind of, you know, a little bit in a weird place. So I asked to guard the night shift between midnight and 6 o'clock in the morning, so that I could watch all these drops falling and falling and falling in the garden. And then one day I saw it. I really realized, and was a clear experience of seeing, not thinking, which was amazing. And what I saw was actually very simple. I saw that just a second, a couple of seconds before the drop and the leaf separate, they start trembling like two lovers. Now there is a very tiny trembling, and then the drops falls.
And you managed to make a picture also.
Oh, I did. Definitely, I did.
Oh, wow.
And I printed it. I brought it to Osho. I mean, to Nilam, and Nilam gave it to Osho. And the next day, Nilam called me and said, Osho says, very good. And he wants you to be his photographer.
Wow.
So that was my, so then I started being one of his photographers. And so I got not only my first koan, but also I got this incredible gift of being close to him and having the possibility to take pictures of him. And so at that point, I decided, okay, I'm going to live here. I'm not going to go back to Italy. And so I went back for a month. I sold everything that I could sell. And I said goodbye to everybody. And I said, okay, I'm off to India. And that was May, or I think May 88. And that's where I started living there. And I lived there until 2000.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and you were asking me how I got to teach.
Yes. Well, this is an insanely beautiful story. And also, I want to know if the photo book still exists. I want to see that photo, of course.
It does.
And I have a darkroom at home. I print color photos, so maybe we could make a print even nowadays. So.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if, well, we will talk about this later. But
yes, of course.
Basically, in end of 88, beginning of 89, Osho created what was called the multiversity.
Yes, I remember.
Which was a series of different schools divided for different areas. And one of the areas was called Zen martial arts. So he sent me the message and said, I want you to be the director. So then I became the director, and there were many good martial artists in Pune. There was like a very good Kyudo, Japanese archery practitioner, which a Japanese, and then there were like a Swedish man that was really good in Kung Fu and Wushu, and there were like few good Tai Chi teachers, and the other Aikido practitioners that were students of mine or not. So we built a dojo, and then we started the school. And actually, the school very quickly got pretty big. Now, I was having Aikido classes myself, like 4 to 5 times every morning, a week. And then 3 or 4 times in the evening, we having sword classes. And then there were other teachers that were teaching. There were Kyudo classes, Wushu classes. So after a few months, we had like a 3 months martial arts training that would go all the time for 3 months, and it was fantastic. It was absolutely beautiful, So, and that's where I started practicing a lot, really a lot. Sometimes we would do, for example, one of the stars of our practice was a week sword practice, where we would start with dynamic in the morning. Or sometimes we would start even earlier doing a sitting meditation, and then dynamic, and then practice, and then finish with Kundalini and discus. And so it was like 14, 15 hours a day. And then we would finish with 36 hours, ongoing, without stopping, with practice, meditation, sword, meditation, sword, meditation, sword, and there was so much energy that, was like piece of cake, 36 hours. So what? Like, and it reminds me a little bit when we did with Faisal this work with the
Citadel.
Citadel,
Yes.
was the same understanding, you just are, that's it, and then you keep connecting with that source of energy and passion and intention and beauty, and so yes, so there was my life in that time.
So, two things. First, did Osho have any kind of direct influence on it? Did he sometimes give instructions, or did he just let you do your own thing?
A mixture of both,
Mm-hmm.
in the sense that he, in many discourses during the years, he had given some of his own understanding about martial arts, about the Hara Center, about working with centering and grounding. Centering in Pune 1, so we're talking now, so 70, in the 70s, Osho would give to everybody that would arrive, he would give two basic retreats.
Mm-hmm.
One was the Enlightenment Intensive, where you work with the question, who am I?
Mm-hmm.
And the other one was centering. So the question of centering has always been at the very foundation of Osho's work, because he kept saying, look, you guys, if you don't have roots in life, which means the willingness also to be with the darkness where the roots are, there are no flowers possible, because there is no real ground. So for me, that message was very clear. That I need to put attention to the roots, to the roots, to the roots, to the roots, to the center. Yeah. On top of it, the last year and a half before he left his body, he would end every single night with a Hara meditation.
Oh, I didn't know.
If you listen to his discourses, every discourse ends with a guided Hara meditation, where basically he says, okay, lie down. So you had this 8, 9, 10,000 people lying down, and close your eyes and die. And he would go into bringing us into this place of death, go into your Hara point and be completely still. And he did it over and over and over, every night. So that was like every possible support I could ask for, And for me, that's where I actually got a lot of revelations about the fact that the center does not exist. There is no such a thing as a center. Mm-hmm. There is a centering. There is a capacity to be, but there isn't definitely any specific physical point that we can say this is the Hara center, So it's and that created a very strong shift inside, because actually it brought a lot of relaxation. It brought a lot of spaciousness. It brought a lot of inclusiveness. And there was a lot of change also in the way I was practicing Aikido, in the way I was looking at things, and so on. So yes, so Osho was very, also he had read a lot, so he was often talking about, for example, what was the name of the German philosopher that wrote the book, Hara, Graf...
Yes, I know, but he was a Nazi, right?
Yes, I know he was, but in his experience with the Kyudo, he had a certain kind of understanding.
Yes,
which was based on a direct experience. Now, of course, but this is actually an interesting point.
Yes, it is.
States of consciousness are available to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter if somebody is a Nazi, a communist, a Christian, or anything else. Then the question is how you translate these states of consciousness in your day-to-day life in the form. Like,
Yeah.
obviously, in his case, he translated in a way that, from my perspective, is not exactly the best way.
No, of course.
But see, it's actually interesting to see also the relationship with the consciousness as a possibility of states that does not belong to any specific form, and how then that specific consciousness manifests in the form. If we don't grow up as human beings, if we don't become humans, we can be completely open in our 7 center, 57 center, or whatever, and still be an asshole.
Yes, yes, exactly.
So that's actually an interesting place also to work with,
Yeah, I had questions about that because yesterday actually I was reading into his history, and I was kind of shocked because it was way worse than we imagined. He was actually on the payroll of actual Nazis when he was in Japan for years. So
okay.
It was not an accidental connection. He was really it was his profession, so to say. But
Japanese were also,
yes, that was another part of the same things I was reading, that a lot of Zen Buddhism was also involved. And then I was thinking,
if you read Mishima, for example,
mm-hmm.
Mishima was an incredible practitioner of sword, but in certain aspects of his philosophy is completely, a reactionary, homophobic, conservative person,
Yes.
So,
and what I think would be interesting is, we both have our roots in for me is Tai Chi, and for you is Japanese martial arts, but we both went to Faisal, and I think his theory about the point of light and really being a person in connection to the more neutral kind of planes of being is maybe important, because I think the Hara it gives a person a lot of power also, and
sure.
if you don't use it responsibly, if it's not integrated with with the point of light, it can be dangerous, because in a lot of what I think in a lot of more kind of Zen Buddhist teachings, they don't acknowledge that there is really somebody, like, that's the basic talk where Faisal talks about, that's his
Yes, I mean,
what are your thoughts about that?
Also in Zen, there are different approaches. Like, for example, if you read Suzuki Roshi,
mm-hmm.
if you read Suzuki Roshi, is humanity is absolutely incredible, and then there are other traditions which are more rigid and confined, which definitely, they don't open to the humanness, and to the of each one of each incarnation, and they don't recognize even the uniqueness of each human being. There is more like a flattening. But this depends also on the different, more than the traditions. I think it depends a lot on the person itself, that how the understanding is there and how the understanding is embodied, in the experience.
But do you work with it in your teaching? When you were doing the School of Centering, did you work with this aspect of taking responsibility of the power which frees with working with the Hara?
Absolutely. In the beginning, I was doing it in a more unconscious way.
Mm-hmm.
It was more like something that spontaneously was coming from me. as a human being, because was part of my own experience of growth. But then little by little, for example, Aikido means literally the art of peace. So, when Ueshiba Sensei talks about it, he talks about the heart of being human. And of course, there is an absolute responsibility in how you use your power and because in creating, not in destroying. In fact, the whole art of Aikido is about taking any kind of destructive attack and transforming it in a moment of merging and peace. So that there isn't a winner and a loser. There is just pure connection and energy. So I found that completely fascinating. And I was very lucky because my teacher, Pasqualino, was really an embodiment in day-to-day life of that quality or humanness. So see, that's also something that I was lucky to also meet certain kind of people, that had that kind of integrity and the heart and soulness and beauty, So it's not something easy to it's definitely part of my teaching at this moment. In the last few years, more and more and more and more. For example, in this period, that a lot of people, also very intelligent people, are completely in reaction, and they are looking for somebody to blame, and they are looking for wanting to prove their righteousness and all this. This becomes particularly important, of course, because a path of humanness can only be, in my understanding, a path of inclusion.
Yes.
A path of non-separation. And that takes a lot of attention and also guts. Really guts, because it's very easy to create conflict. It's the easiest thing in life.
Yes, and it's also easy to, maybe not easy, but it's also, some people use meditation or even Hara work to kind of escape life.
Escape, definitely.
That's also a risk.
Yes, that's definitely a risk. And that's also something that I continuously try to work with my friends, because there is that tendency, and I can understand it because I know it very intimately, because when I was young, for many years, I was I remember also when I met Osho, when I met Faisal, I was very good at escaping into the absolute. That became natural to me at some point, but to really be present in this embodiment and participating, that was much more difficult. Or even actually, I was avoiding it for a long time. Or it could only happen in my terms.
Yes.
Which is another way of avoiding it. So no, I know exactly what you're talking about, and I think that's actually what makes everything so beautiful and so tender, this possibility to actually be conscious in the form,
And it's never finished, of course, in that way.
Sorry, say again?
It's never finished.
Oh, never. And thanks God. The journey becomes richer and richer and richer and more mysterious. So definitely.
Yeah, there's one. Maybe it's to go back, but I had one question when you said that Osho was doing those Hara meditations for 1.5 years.
Yeah.
Do you know why he put the emphasis on that later on so much?
Well, this, of course, is my speculation. uh, he said very often that, to be alive
Mm-hmm.
is has to do with being centered, being present. Yeah. So and how fundamental it is uh, to feel and to nurture our life force, and at the same time to understand uh, what is our personal connection with and ideas about death.
Mm-hmm.
So when Osho was talking about Hara, no,
Mm-hmm.
a lot was about looking and experiencing the Hara as the point of where death and life meet.
Okay.
Yeah, that was in my understanding, that was the main point. So basically, it was about dissolving any kind of separation between life and death, and yeah, and basically also learning also to get out of the way. For me, that was actually one of the basic ways that I learned. This, the more I get out of the way, the more the direct experience of what is right here. And so that helped a lot me personally, and also me as a teacher. So when we do trainings about teaching what we have, that's one of the fundamental aspects of the learning. How can I get out of the way so that spirit can do its work?
Yes, but in that's in a way a classic Taoist insight. But
Yeah.
what I find interesting is that seeing that uh, the belly or the hara or the danchen, um, that a resistance to being there might have to do with the fear of death. That's kind of um, I never thought about it in that way so much. So what you think that that insight is new in the sense that Osho came up with that, or were you thinking about that before, or was that just happening in that 1.5 year?
Uh, well, first of all, I'm not so sure that is so much about the fear of death.
Mhm.
Is more about the experience of dying rather than the fear. See, often I notice that the attention is on the fear,
Mhm.
but then I ask myself, okay, how can I be afraid of what I don't know directly, what I don't experience directly? So and this we have done this with Faisal many times, doing the black, like, about understanding death. How can I be afraid of something that I do not know directly? So one of the things that for me it gave me that work with Osho was this movement away from ideas, concept, association, interpretations with death, and really the willingness to let go into that space in the Hara where there is no separation between life and death. There are no concepts about life and death. There is just pure being. And in that sense, I really don't know. I assume that this was Osho's experience because he was always talking about his direct experience.
Mhm.
So, and also my experience with him was this, because the times that I had, for example, the opportunity to give him individual photography, just me and him and his caretaker, immediately that space of infinite mystery would open up. and I would find myself completely in that space. So much so that I remember the second time that I was taking pictures, at some point, he looked at me, and I was in a kind of a I was completely present, and yet so expansive that I could not take any picture. So he kind of pulled me back little by little so that I could come back and embody and take pictures. So that was his energy, that was his presence. And I every night he would just basically invite us in that to share, that sense of vastity and mystery. That's the only thing that I can say about it.
And would you say that your perception of Osho was more like he was boundless, or could you also sense that he had actual substantial hara? Could you?
Both,
Oh.
definitely, both. I've seen him also in his hara when he was on fire.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man, was was something amazing to witness. Definitely. No, he was both.
You remember a specific moment he was on fire?
Oh, many moments. Uh, for example, sometimes when he was giving discourses on Kabir or on certain Zen masters, one I remember one discourse which was called "The Inescapable," where he was talking about a Zen master Tahui, and he was talking about the inescapable. Basically, is that moment where you can't escape. You can't escape, and also the responsibility that that moment brings in terms of embodiment of enlightenment. No? And he was very clear: enlightenment is not the end; it's the beginning. The moment you wake up, that's when the real work starts. You need to embody. There's another beautiful discourse, it's called The Inertia of Habits, where he talks about, in that place, you really need to convince your mind that there is something much more efficient and beautiful and perfect in living life than the limited mind. So there are many, many situations. And also, I remember one very concrete, practical thing. We had just arrived in Pune the first time in '87. And after a few days that we were there, and Osho was giving discourse in the morning and in the evening, just for about an hour, 45 minutes, something like that. And then he was actually working on the Prophet, Khalil Gibran. And one morning he came and he said, I received a letter from the police commissioner of Pune saying that I'm not allowed to talk more than 1 hour a day.
Okay.
He was complete fire, was like seeing, fire. And from that moment on, he started talking about 7 hours every day. Three and a half hours in the morning, three. And he was saying, okay, he can come here and put me in jail. I want to see if he has the guts to do that. So he could be like incredibly powerful when and in that moment, he was completely in his body. There was no. So I've seen both these sides, and I experienced both of them. Yeah. And as I was a guard, I was a guard in that moment. I can tell you, to sit there for 3.5 hours, completely alert, wanting to pee, sometimes was very challenging.
Yeah, I can imagine.
He didn't seem to have any kind of problem at all. He was like going for it.
Um, oh yeah, well, we are talking for a long time, and I don't want to take too much of your time, but there's one more thing I really would like to discuss. So we both have the same teacher now, Faisal, and he has the things about the citadel and the stupa, and I wanted to know if you have experienced that your sense of belly and groundedness and centeredness, if that there was another step to it when you met Faisal. Is there another, um, or maybe, yeah, that's a big topic. Sorry, I don't know.
Well, no, I'm going to tell you something very, very personal, okay? Because that was definitely a step. We were, I think, was the third time that, the fourth time we were in Germany, and we were doing the absolute, the retreat on the absolute. And it was the third day, or the second or the third day, I don't remember. And during the lunchtime, I asked Faisal to, if he could come out in the garden for a moment with me, because I needed to talk with him. So we went out in the garden and we sat, and I kept communicating with him my experience of the absolute, and the fact that I felt very familiar with that experience, and he kept accompanying me, during this short journey. And at some point, he said, "Well, can you feel that it landed?" I said, "Yes, it's definitely landed in my belly." And he looked at me and said, "Well, are you sure it's just in the belly?" So I kept looking and say, "No, actually, it's in my genitals." And he had a big laugh. And then we moved and we went back to this thing. And when we before starting work in the afternoon, he said, "Oh, by the way, I have an announcement to make. Before, in this room, there was only one rooster, and now there are two." So, how can I ask more than a complete recognition and a complete love from Faisal, like I did in that moment? So that was a big turning point, because it's important also that there is a reflection, especially when there is a process going on. It's fundamental that there is a reflection of a teacher. And so for me, that was like, wow, it was like the landed was even stronger. So,
There was
and of course,
a quick integration.
it was a quick integration, and also it gave me the opportunity to open up to something that for me had not been easy, which was the point of light. Because of my attachment to the absolute, I had a little bit of resistance to the point of light. But that integration was actually relaxed completely the whole system. And in that relaxation, I could little by little allow the point to really manifest and to recognize, oh, okay, this is what it's about.
Yeah.
And the resistance had left. No, so that was a big turning point, definitely.
Wow, that's a intense story.
Yeah.
So does that mean that I can imagine in that sense that it's all there at the same time? It's like what he explains as the stupa, like the absolute, the point, everything is there.
Well, that's another of the last time that I saw Faisal many years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I came as to visit during his and he was working. I don't remember exactly. It was an integration meeting. And at some point, I said something, and he answered, and it was about loving each other, recognizing the love that was in that moment between me and him, and And at some point, and he said, and he asked me, "Can you take it?" And I said, "Absolutely, yes." And I was completely embodying that. And in that moment, Faisal said, "Now everybody, close your eyes, because Avi, he was called me. Avi, in this moment, is the embodiment of the stupa. So get it, you know." And I know that the stupa is something that I spontaneously can embody. So again, there was that kind of recognition that made me take another jump in owning, myself and everything that I am, as I am.
Yes,
So
sorry, sorry, it makes me speechless. I don't know what to say, because I think, yeah, it feels like the stupa is like the end of the Hara journey, kind of, right?
yes,
They
I
are
I,
connected. It's
I
a
agree. I
there's a
agree.
thread there.
Yes, also because for me the stupa is really about the dignity of the human. Is really the capacity to own the power and the intelligence in the humanness with absolute dignity and integrity and tenderness.
Yeah, it's a little bit glitchy, or what?
Yeah, wait, there is something that is interfering. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, I heard a sound also.
Yeah.
Yes, I think. Yeah, let's stop on this, because I think that the conversation landed in a very beautiful place, and I could talk on for hours. I have many more questions, but I think this is a nice rounded.
So we are ending with totality.
Yes, exactly. That's very nice. And the next interview will be with Faisal, so that will be very interesting.
Beautiful, beautiful. So give him my love.
Yes, I will. It's in 2 weeks.
Good.
Thank you so much, and we'll email about. Maybe we can do something with your pictures. And I have as I said, I have a color print lab, like the analog. Maybe you can dig up some memories, and we could do something.
With the drop,
Yeah, maybe, yes.
I can send you the picture with the drop, no problem.
Yeah, but I mean, like we could do a print, or we could do something with that at some point.
Okay, we can talk about that, and we can talk also about the other friends, like we said.
Yes, like Anando. Yes. Okay, we
Okay.
will. Thank you so much, and
You're most welcome.
you will
You
start
have,
with your day, and we will end it. So that's
okay, okay, my friend. Nice to see you.
nice to see you too. Talk soon.
Thank
Bye.
you a lot. Bye.